The sky was clear, stars were shining, the sea was dead calm. And I thought, I don't know, I couldn't understand it. So I came out of my cabin and I thought, well, I go forward. And I went forward to the well deck on the starboard side, and I could see ice in the well deck. There's no sign of Iceberg then, because she'd passed us.
The stars shimmered like glass, the sea was dead calm. Then, without warning, the Titanic stopped. No crash, no screeching metal, just an eerie silence in the middle of the Atlantic. Frank Prentice was the assistant purser on board, trained, calm, and prepared for anything. Or so he thought. That night would haunt him for the rest of his life. There was no impact as such, he later recalled in a 1979 BBC interview. It was like slamming your brakes in a car. And that was that. She stopped. What followed was chaos, darkness, and something far stranger than a glancing blow with ice, because Prentice didn't just hear stillness. He heard something else, something that didn't belong. 4 explosions. Dull, echoing booms from deep within the ship. For decades, we've been told the Titanic struck an iceberg, that the unsinkable ship met its match in frozen nature. But survivors like Frank said otherwise. They heard no crash, saw no jagged wall of ice, just a sudden, unnatural stop. And then hell broke loose. So if it wasn't the iceberg, what was it? Frank Prentice was in his cabin when it happened. The porthole was open, the sky crystal clear, stars above a sea so flat it looked painted. He saw nothing strange, no panic, no visible damage. But when he returned from fetching lifeboat provisions, the Titanic was listing sharply. And then came the sounds, those 4 deep booms. Steam pipes? Boilers rupturing? Or something more deliberate? Frank was thrown into the freezing ocean as the ship split. He survived, barely, and later described floating among corpses, watching the stern rise and vanish into the sea. You lie in bed at night, he said, and the whole thing comes round again. Frank wasn't alone. Dozens of survivors told the U.S. Senate inquiry the same thing. No dramatic impact, just vibration. Subtle sounds, a strange stop. If an iceberg hit a ship at 22 knots, wouldn't you feel it? Hear it? Why did so many people say otherwise? Here's where things start to unravel. One of the most infamous Titanic theories doesn't begin with an iceberg, but with a different ship entirely. The RMS Olympic. Launched a year before Titanic, the Olympic was its nearly identical sister. Same size, same design. But in September 1911, the Olympic collided with the HMS Hawke, a British warship. Her starboard hull was badly damaged, and insurers refused to pay out, leaving White Star Line with a massive financial mess. That's where the conspiracy begins.
The theory goes like this. White Star Line, desperate to cut its losses, pulled off a switch. They secretly disguised the damaged Olympic as the brand new Titanic, then sank it for the insurance money. It sounds outrageous, but some point to photos as proof. The Olympic had 16 portholes on the forward sea deck. Titanic had 14, until her maiden voyage when, mysteriously, she had 16. Coincidence? Others point to different interior layouts, last-minute crew changes, and the suspicious week-long refitting just before Titanic set sail. But the most damning red flag? J.P. Morgan, the man who essentially owned White Star Line, had booked a private suite for the voyage, then canceled last minute, citing health reasons. He was later seen relaxing at a French resort with his mistress. Was he avoiding a doomed ship he knew was never meant to make it? Now, the conspiracy deepens. 3 of the most powerful men in America, all aboard the Titanic, all opponents of centralized banking. John Jacob Astor IV, Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, all perished. Less than a year later, the U.S. Federal Reserve Act was passed, an act J.P. Morgan and his associates had long lobbied for, and which his rivals may have blocked had they survived. Did Morgan eliminate his opposition under the cover of an iceberg tragedy? There's no smoking gun, but the timing is chilling. A luxury ship, a billionaire canceling last minute, his enemies trapped on board, and a convenient disaster that clears the path for financial control. But what if the Titanic didn't need help sinking? What if she was already doomed before she ever left port? Buried deep inside the ship's coal bunkers, a fire had been burning for days. A real one, not metaphorical, not speculative. Verified by crew. Coal fires weren't unheard of on steamships, but this one was different. Intense. Smoldering. located directly against the starboard hull, the exact side where the ship would later scrape against ice. Some believe the fire weakened the steel, making the hull brittle. Others claim that to control the fire, crews shoveled burning coal straight into the boilers, pushing the ship to dangerous speeds despite warnings of nearby ice. So maybe the iceberg didn't sink the Titanic. Maybe the fire did, hours before the collision. There's even a photo, taken days before departure, showing a strange black streak on the hull, right where the fire raged.
Let's go back to that impact, or lack of one. Captain L.M. Collins, an expert in sea ice navigation, offered a bold alternative. Titanic didn't hit an iceberg, it hit pack ice, a flat, sprawling sheet of hardened ice low to the water and nearly invisible at night. Collins studied survivor testimony and noticed something strange. No one could agree on what the iceberg looked like. Some said it was 60 feet tall, others barely saw anything. That's when he introduced the concept of super-refraction, a trick of light in extreme cold that distorts distance and height. According to Collins, what crew actually saw wasn't a towering iceberg, but a shimmering white haze, the leading edge of pack ice. And here's the kicker. If Titanic had smashed head-on into a massive iceberg at full speed, she would have sunk in minutes. But she lasted nearly 3 hours. That suggests multiple small breaches, not one catastrophic rupture. So what really tore open the ship? A weakened hull, scraping against low-lying ice, triggering structural failures. And maybe those 4 strange booms Frank Prentice heard weren't explosions, but sections of the ship breaking apart. Some theories go colder than ice and older than time. Enter the mummy's curse. On board the Titanic was a man named William Stead, a British journalist obsessed with the supernatural. He told fellow passengers a chilling tale. A cursed Egyptian mummy was aboard the ship, sealed in the cargo hold, being transported to a museum in New York. Stead claimed this artifact had caused chaos in London. Fires, deaths, misfortunes. Passengers laughed it off, until the ship went down. Stead didn't survive, but his story did. Soon newspapers were running wild with tales of a mummy's curse. Some claimed it was smuggled aboard in secret. Others believed it had never left the British Museum. The truth? The so-called mummy was actually a sarcophagus lid, and it never boarded Titanic. But the myth endures because people needed something, anything, to make sense of the horror. And the idea of ancient vengeance made the senseless feel meaningful. The Titanic was more than steel and luxury. It was pride. It was power. It was a message. Humanity had conquered nature. But maybe that fire in the coal bunker wasn't the only one burning. Above deck, another fire raged, one of ambition, ego, speed, a desire to break records, to impress the world, to arrive in New York in style and in triumph. That need to go faster, despite warnings, despite known risks, may have sealed the ship's fate as surely as any iceberg. Frank Prentice heard no crash that night, but he heard something. And so did we. We hear it every time we look back at the Titanic. A creak, a whisper, a warning that the things we build to prove our greatness sometimes prove our downfall. So, was it an iceberg? A switch? A fire? Sabotage? Maybe it was all of them. Maybe it was none. But one thing's certain. The Titanic didn't just sink. It went down with secrets, and some of them are still rising to the surface. If this story made you rethink everything, like and subscribe, and click the next video, because we're just getting started.